Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Sequel Q&A. My name's Doug. So the next sequel that we're covering is Jurassic World. This one should be a lot of fun. Great cast, great special effects, and dinosaurs. Who doesn't love dinosaurs? And for it, I chatted with actor James Dumont. Man, James is one of those guys that's going to go in the all-time list on the Mount Rushmore of interviews. The guy just has so many different parts of his life that are just truly amazing. Like, his first acting gig, which kind of like was an accidental acting gig. He was in Blues Brothers. He was young. I don't want to ruin the story because he tells it so much better. So I'll let him do that. And then growing up in Chicago, in that scene at the time, there were so many up and coming actors. John Cusack, he goes through the laundry list of all the people that he was going out for roles against. And he auditioned for the movie Class, and it ended up being Rob Lowe, Andrew McCarthy, but he still got a part in the movie. And that really kickstarted he already had the passion to act, but that really fueled it. Then he was doing theater. Then he got back into acting. You look at his credits. He has 150 credits. So many things that he's been on that you've seen him. Most recently, Candy Cane Lane. He plays Donald in the new Eddie Murphy Christmas movie on Amazon Prime. But most people know him as Chad on the Righteous Gemstones. And what's really neat, and I think this is really cool because you don't really do this. When I prep for these interviews, I watch, a few things the actors are in. But the one thing that was really neat was the fact that his son is on the show. His son Kelton plays Pontius Gemstone. So he's Danny McBride's son on the show, which is really cool. He has a really cool Danny McBride story that he talks about. Then we also talked about like different aspects of acting that you really don't think about. Not just his credits. Like the one thing, especially in this post-COVID world, is self-taping. And that's something he was doing before COVID hit. So he kind of had a leg up on it. So he teaches actors how to self-tape. You don't know what to do in some cases. You think, hey, let's just read a line. But he has it down to a science that the guy works a lot. So he's doing something right. So do me a favor, if you're new here, please subscribe. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And YouTube. If you go on YouTube, you could watch the unedited video of this. Why not? And you can subscribe there, and that helps us out. And without further ado, here is actor James Dumont. So James, I always like to find out like the beginning of the stories. I know you mentioned just when we were just like shooting the shit before I pressed record, like you were in New York doing 200 plays. Are you from the East Coast? Are you from out west?
Yeah, I'm originally from Chicago, but my parents were divorced. So I spent most of my youth was between Chicago and New York. So two great cities.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it's a perfect.
Are you more Chicago sport? Are you Cubs or Yankees?
Oh yeah, Cubs. Yeah, I was raised on the Cubs, and that's the thing with
Okay.
But I mean Yankees, man. I mean, my grandfather was born in Brooklyn, so it's like so there's there is that kind of like. But I mean, I think it's like when you're a kid, it's like your fan with the team that you really kind of grew up on. That's your team. So I grew up on the Bears, and I grew up on the Chicago Cubs. But I mean, who doesn't like the Yankees, man? I mean, I worked for Mickey Mantle for a little while, so that was kind of amazing. So yeah, there's so I got two great cities that are very different, but there's something really fun about growing up in both. I'm a city kid. There's no two ways about that.
That's awesome. Oh, dude, that's all. I'm in Jersey. I went to the city like Knicks games, Yankee games, like wherever we would go.
And
like,
where in Jersey? Where are you at?
But I'm in like Philadelphia, New Jersey. It's a lot cheaper out west. So we're like right on the border of PA. Like
you got it.
It broke my heart. My daughter started. Oh, I know. But I'm like closer to Manhattan than I am to Philly driving, which is wild.
There you go.
And my daughter started basketball, and they gave her a Sixers jersey at the end of basketball. It's like, very disappointing.
Okay. Yeah. I was like you're wearing a Knicks
I wore my
shirt.
Knicks.
It's like, dude.
Knicks. I know.
I think you should be showing up in that all the time. It's like, yeah, the dads and I have been talking, and we're closer to New York than we are Philadelphia. So y'all need to get your shit together.
I wish, man. It's all Eagles and all that stuff out here, man.
The Eagles are hot shit right now. There's lots to talk about the Eagles right now. I mean, I'm kind of digging them. I like when teams really kind of just arrive. I mean, I live in New Orleans. This is my home right now.
Oh, that's awesome. My buddy lived there, man. He was there when they won.
Just heartache. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just, when they won, it was amazing. Like right after, like we just, Katrina, everybody's hurting, and like the city.
Were you there? You've been there for a while?
No. I wasn't there for that, but it was like, but I was here for the championship stuff. So that was kind of fun, you know?
Oh, cool.
I wasn't living here at the time. I moved here in 2018, somewhere in there.
Nice.
Yeah. I've been here 8 years. So
it's a good spot to be. So that's cool.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm 3 hours from New York. I'm 3 hours from LA. I'm 1 hour from Atlanta.
Yeah.
So I can hit 3 markets. I can get to LA quicker than somebody in San Diego. So that's the fun part.
That is true.
Do you know what I mean? Like somebody who lives in San Diego is like, I can literally, there's 8 direct flights. I can get to San Diego before you can. I can get to LA before you can from San Diego.
Yeah.
And Bay Area, same thing.
Which is wild.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah. That's smart, man. So where did it begin? Was it you? Obviously, you do your schooling in Chicago. Is that where?
Yeah, I was born and raised on the north side of Chicago. Yeah, and my I got really, my mom was, really felt that I was kind of a ham and good looking. And so she submitted my baby pictures to the Gerber food bottles. They had a contest. And so I got picked. I was on the Gerber bottle, back in the day. I won't say what year it was. It was
oh my God, that's awesome.
So I was one of the faces on the Gerber bottle, baby thing. So that was my first kind of like foray into the biz. And then as a kid, Sesame Street was like on the air, and I was like, this is the cool, like there's kids in this box and they're doing stuff and there's these animals and they're in a city, and I'm like, I want to do that. Like, how do I go from being the kid watching, having cereal and being like, I want to do what these kids are doing. They're like, sunny, like they're hanging around with a big old, big yellow bird. And I was like, this has got to be cool. So it's like, I had that kind of like, early on, I wanted it, and then even as a kid, I would do, all the theater and I would do school plays and, it's just, it kind of, one thing kind of led to another. And then eventually my uncle was the head of the Chicago Transit Authority for the trains when they were doing movies and stuff. And so he got me a gig. He got me a gig on the train platform for the movie Blues Brothers. And I started up on the train,
but I was like, you know what? Maybe it was
it's a great thing. I started out on the train platform and they're doing like, they're doing this dance thing and I'm like watching it and I was like, man, I would just love to be down there. And then all of a sudden, like one of the moms was like, well, wait a minute, he's got to have a doctor's appointment and he can't miss it. And they're like, we're in the middle of a movie. And she's like, yeah, she's like, he can't stay. And so then they like did a bullhorn. There's like, does anybody, and there's a lot of us kids up on the platform, anybody here know how to dance? I was like, I do. So we came down and they showed us the dance and whoever was figured out the dance quickly and I knew how to dance. And so I went from being like the kid way back in the train platform while the train's going by to being right up in front and learning the dance, And so that was like my, that was how I got my SAG card. It was like the big, big kind of claim to fame, Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So that's how, that's kind of where it all kind of started, for me. I mean, that's what really kind of kicked off of like validation of like, I should be doing this.
Oh yeah.
I was
especially that young too.
I was like 12 years old, dude. Yeah. And I got my SAG card. I'm like, I'm a professional, this is great. And then I like then I did commercials and stuff in Chicago and eventually, I did stuff in high school. I did the movie Class when I was a senior in high school.
I saw that on here. Yeah.
Yeah, like Rob Lowe's in there, and all of us auditioned for the Andrew McCarthy role. Every Chicago actor, Alan Ruck, John Cusack, Casey Samadko, wow. Like all of us were fighting for that, like co-star, to be the lead. And Andrew McCarthy, some kid out of New York, got the gig. But then they threw us in the movie. They threw all of us in the movie, so we all got like some of the roles. And my first speaking part was in the movie Class. So. It was all kind of, I did Risky Business. Awesome. I was background. I was an extra in Risky Business along with like, Jason Gedrick and I were like in the scene with all like with all the hookers and stuff. And we're like, and I think he went home with like a Playboy Playmate or something. It was like, it was awesome. It was a great time. God. And all the John Hughes movies were in there and you had Ferris Bueller's Day Off and you had, it just was like a time where, Chicago, thanks to like the Blues Brothers, really put that city on the map. And then once Ferris Bueller came out, it was like, forget it, bro. Like, but the mark of a successful Chicago actor is that you leave. The real successful Chicago actors leaves. And then the later in your life you stay, and you just, like, one of my friends, spent time in LA, went to high school with him, spent time in LA, was doing plays in LA, wasn't really kind of hitting in LA. He's gone back to Chicago. He does voiceover stuff. He does commercials, and then he does all the TV shows that are there. And then he gets to play all these roles in all the plays that you could ever imagine. And so everybody has their own kind of like mark of success, and, and I went to high school with John Cusack, and Jeremy Piven was in my school years. So it's like, I got
really.
Yeah. Wow. So these are, and even like Joan Cusack was in a whole bunch of stuff, and she was with us. And, the next school over was New Trier, and they had like, Roseanne Arquette was in there, and all the Arquettes went to that school, and Aidan Quinn. And it was like this area where we were all kind of like doing stuff, Lily Taylor's from there. It was a group of people that were like these Chicago actors, and there was Chicago theater actors all through the 80s that, now kind of are all over the place, doing all kinds of stuff. Joe Montana, there was an older generation of like the Steppenwolf guys. So there was this sense that you really, and then Saturday night, all the Saturday Night Live people were coming from Second City. So when I was in high school, I did an internship at Second City, and I'm like, there's Joe, I was watching, who's some of the Mary Gross and Tim Casarinsky.
Was Lance there at all? Was Lance Kinsey, was he there still, or no? He was already gone?
I think he was already gone at that point. I'm much older than you might think. But so the point is that
I was thinking Police Academy hit. He bounced like right when Police Academy hit is when he was like on his way out of Second City. But
yeah, that's about right. That sounds about right. But like, my years were, I had the Murrays, Bill had already been on Saturday Night Live, but Joel Murray was there. I had Tim Casarinsky, Mary Gross, Mike Haggerty, like these were like folks that like had been kicking around for, and the thing was, they would all go from there to LA, like what they were, once you really kind of maxed out that market, you'd go to LA. And then I met with all the big Chicago actors in LA. They'd all hang around the farmer's market, and they're like, "Oh, you're the new guy here. Forget it. Hey, sit down there, pal. Let me tell you how LA goes. We sit here, we have coffee every day, all of us. We got to, get a Danish or whatever, and it's like, it's all the Chicago dudes, and they welcome you into the fold there. It's like, there's this thing going around. It's like worse than AIDS." And I was like, what what could possibly be worse than AIDS? And like, it's called scale plus 10, take it or leave it. It's like, you just got your SAG card. They don't give a shit about quotes. They don't care you did a Spencer for hire. They don't give a shit. They want to pay you scale as if you just got off a fucking, turnip truck, Don't do it, Jimmy. Don't do it. I'm telling you, And I was like, I just got here, dude. I'll take whatever jobs they give me, So it's just, there was a sense of that, and it still is. I still, I envy that I never really was big, was that kind of 80s Chicago theater actor. I always admired those guys because I interned at Steppenwolf as well. And they were going off and they were doing, things on Broadway, they were doing, and I was just like, and there's Malkovich and there's Gary Sinise and there's Jeff Perry, and I was like, these were iconic guys that were like the best Chicago actors they were going from here to Broadway, or they were going here to Hollywood. So, and then the fact that when I was growing up, I'd have time in New York, and I would, like, my dad and I would do a weekend of theater when I was in college, and we'd see a Friday night show, Saturday matinee, Saturday evening, Sunday matinee. Boom. He'd go back to Texas. I go back to college, and I just was immersed in, great performances, and so stuff like that kind of gets you going, and still now I'm at a point where my kids are older, and I think I'm going to probably go back and start working in the theater again. It's something I've wanted, it's hard to afford to do it. But I got one kid already out of college, and one's two years before they're done. So I'm like, maybe I don't have to do so much film and television. Maybe I can get back on the stage, maybe I can afford to get back on the stage. We'll see.
No, that's what it is. Like, I talked to Eric Roberts, and he was like, I would love to do theater, but they want me to be exclusive to them for, 26 weeks. And we do this and he's like, I could shoot 20
Eric is a
movies
beast.
in
Like
26 weeks.
look how many credits he has.
Yeah.
He's something like 1,000 movies or something
It's
like
insane.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. He and his wife are like, they were on Gemstones with us last 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
And I did a movie opposite Eric. I was
She's
like a
the
lead
best.
opposite. Yeah. And the two of them are just like hilarious. And they have a million. I'm sure he had millions of stories, but like the thing with Eric and I, because I was a lead in this film, that I replaced John Goodman in the movie because John must have read the script. He's like, what the hell is this piece of crap? So like they got me to step in for him. And I think I never told him that story, but like that's how Eric and I got to be close. Hung out for like 2 weeks together. And then being on set with him again, I just said, dude, you're just such a workhorse. Like, how do you do this thing? He goes, well, my wife and I was very unhappy at a certain point. You know what I mean? Like I was drinking and I was doing drugs and I was fucking around with women, and my wife was like, what the hell's going, like, what's going on? Like you're happy, and he said, I realized that we had a conversation and she's like, Eric, you're just unhappy. What? And he goes, where are you the most happy? He goes, I'm most happy when I'm home with you, and I'm most happy when I'm on set. And she goes, well, then let's dedicate ourselves to that. You know what I mean? You can be California sober and you can just, but let's enjoy, like, if you were really happy working and being on set, then let's do that. Let's dedicate ourselves to that. And that's just a beautiful kind of, and I don't think he said he was having affairs or anything like that. But my point is,
I know what you mean.
What the point he makes is that everybody makes an overture to him. I don't believe that he followed through in any of it, but the point is, he talks about how everybody kind of, when everything's handed to you, it's, he's like, it's very tempting. He told this great story about, he works a lot in Russia because, the movies that like, Pope of Greenwich Village, the Runaway Train, they were like huge movies in Russia. He became like fucking Stallone in Russia. So he pre-sells territories in Russia. And he told me a story about doing a movie where they pay him in rubles. He goes to the airport, he gets off the plane, they handcuff a suitcase to his wrist. They take him to the bank. In the suitcase are rubles that he turns into the bank. Then it turns into money that they then wire transfer back to LA. Then they take him to a hotel, and when he walks in the hotel, there's a mound of fucking cocaine on the table. There's these beautiful Russian women that are like just in the room, and there's frozen fucking, there's frozen vodka, Russian vodka and caviar just sitting there. And he goes, I got all the money I need. There's cocaine here. There's beautiful women. I'm being handed the best caviar and the best. And he goes, how can someone not, like, he goes, when you have that kind of access, he's like, this is, like, there's no challenge. There's no, you know what I mean? You're offered everything. And he goes, it was that kind of temptation. It was just a great story that he told. And it came down to, like, you have to decide why you're doing this. If you're doing this to be famous, you're doing this to make money, this is not the business to do it. You can go create a fucking app if you want to make money. You want to, if you want to be famous, are you really an influencer? What are you influencing? Are you changing the two wars, or are you just creating content just because you're a narcissist and you can't not have attention? That's not creative. People real artists don't work that way. They don't give a shit about when they create art. They don't care how it's responded, as opposed to the exact opposite. I'm creating it based on response. So, Eric's right. It comes down to, like, why are you doing this? And it was a beautiful conversation with his wife. And she's like, yeah, he's most happy on set and being with me. And so she goes, let's fucking do this together. Let's, he says, 1 year we went around the world, like, I must have told you, went around the world like 3 times in a year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's a life full lived. That's a body of work. That's a legacy that's beyond, and he's a good dude. He's a good person. He's a great husband. He's a great
and he gives
father.
back. Like he gives back. I talked to a guy that was out of Philly that reached out to me when I posted the interview, like way back in 2020. And he was like, oh yeah, you want to check out this movie that Eric was in that my son directed? And then I talked to the guy on the phone, and he just talked about, like, and you can get this even from when I talked to Eric for like an hour and a half. He he like loves to really like be one of the guys, when
Yeah.
really with his credits and his experience in the
He talks
business,
to everybody.
he can be that a-hole that sits in his trailer, call me out, but he's there like giving back. Like when he's not on set in front of the camera, he's like talking to people, asking them how they're doing, and I'm like, man, that's what you
That's
want with these guys that
he was
roles.
a great addition to our cast. Like everybody really loved him, and I just love seeing them again and just kind of coming full circle from, being in this movie that was like, that I'm embarrassed to say that I was in. It was originally called Attack on the Governor. And then it became, what the hell did it become? It was like Billy Zane is in it, and me and Robin Gibbons and Eric. It was one of those straight to DVD movies that I still haven't seen a fucking dime from. But it was like, it was just, and apparently it was like the writer director like stole and lifted an entire script from another project and just whipped it together. And I think we shot it in like 4 days or something like that. It was just, we had I had rehearsals and stuff beforehand, because then we went to go shoot. But it was like, I think we shot the whole movie in 4 days. It was ridiculous.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's crazy. And they had 3 cameras going, and it'd be like, so I'm like giving a speech, and they had teleprompters up, and I'm giving a speech to like 200 people in a ballroom at a hotel in the top of Baton Rouge. And then I'm down in the basement, and I'm jumping in a car where the Russian mob is trying to shoot me, and then I go outside, and I'm like, I'm like internal bleeding and helicopters above. And like, it just was just nuts. And then I'm like choking some hooker in a hotel room. It was like, offering $1 million to Eric. It was just insane. It was just insane, but super fun. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So you said you were going to, so when did you end up going out? Like, was LA the first thing you went to, or was it New York?
New York. Cause I went to school at BU. I got a scholarship to BU. Went there for a couple of years. Then the summer between my sophomore and junior year, they had cuts in the program, and I got cut from the program. Cause there was other people like did musical theater, and I didn't do any of that stuff. So it was like, I just went to New York and did theater. So I joined up with a theater company called Ensemble Studio Theater. There was these up and coming playwrights, a guy named John Patrick Shanley, a guy named David Mamet, a guy named, Arthur Miller, a guy named a woman named Wendy Wasserstein. And there was these, Craig Lucas, these amazing, Richard Greenberg, these amazing playwrights were there. And it was mostly a playwrights-based theater where the actor's job was to serve the writing and serve the play. And I cut my teeth there. I cleaned toilets, and I, ushered, and I got to be a reader for the auditions, and that was a cool thing, because like, they have this 1-act marathon, and like all the most amazing actresses were auditioning for this one play. And I'm the reader, right? And so this is a great story. So I'm a reader for the auditions, because they want to, and the whole scene was like, it was an old girlfriend that hadn't seen her boyfriend in a long time. And she comes right in, and she jumps in his arms, and she like totally makes out with him. And then they have this whole little conversation. I haven't seen you in a while. It's so great. And like, these actresses are all kind of fighting for this role. And it's like, who's coming into audition? Marissa Tomei, Sarah Jessica Parker, it was like the who's who of like the most amazing young, beautiful actresses at that time. And a couple of them were slipping me the tongue. Like it's like, we're just reading. And a couple of them, I'm like, damn, like, oh, she's really kind of going for it. You know what I mean? So it was one of those like, so I got to be a reader for that. And I was like, man, what I realized is when these actors were coming in, they were so fully committed on who they were. And they had like no one was nervous, and everybody, they just, when they came in, they're like, they owned the role. They're like, as if they were already cast. They just assume this is what, and they go, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. Like, this is exactly what I want to do. As opposed to, I heard you want this, and let me try to figure out, what you want. I mean, it's like, it was a really great lesson for me as a young actor. And then there were these other amazing older actors who were going to play the lead guy. And it was like interesting actors, like a guy named David Thornton. And there was amazing actors that were like Lenny Dolans. There were these actors that you kind of wouldn't know about, but they were They just stayed in New York. They were really real New York theater artists. And like no one would read like these guys, like no one, it was so great. So it was a good lesson so I was in New York, and then I spent about 7 years in New York. And then I walked in there with $200. I had $200 in my pocket. And I left, when I left New York, I had done 200 plays, mostly readings. And I booked the Broadway show, 6 Degrees of Separation. And they were going to do a national tour that was going to start in Los Angeles. I had gone to Los Angeles years previous with a TV pilot that never went anywhere. And my cousin lived there. And so finally I was like, okay, this is what's going on. Finally, I'm basically going to make this work. Cause I knew I had 9 months of work on the road. So LA, we moved to LA. My girlfriend at the time is now my wife of 27 years. So we moved to LA, and then I'm on the road for 9 months, and she worked in a restaurant and started, going to law school. And, we built our life in LA for about 20 years, bought a house, raised a couple of kids. And then, I had heard that because of the tax credits right after Katrina, or a little bit before Katrina, 2005 or so, that a lot of film work was coming to Louisiana. I ran into a friend of mine who had moved back to Baton Rouge to be with his mom, kind of help her. She was sick. And so I ran into him, and he's like, yeah, man, I did, I booked 14 movies last year, but I could only do 12. What? I'm like, he goes, yeah, I had this lead in the feature, but I let it go because they wanted me to be the doctor in Benjamin Buttons. And I thought that would be a bigger movie and better for me than this independent film. And I was like, yeah, I think that's pretty good. So I was like, I need to get a hold of this. And this was right around the time that the Writers Guild, the last Writer Guild strike was happening. And so it turns out that, I just started pursuing an agent in Louisiana. My wife is from Baton Rouge, and the goal was to try to get as much work as I could. And I went on a roll. I booked like 50 movies and TV shows, and then I nailed a big one. I nailed 12 weeks of work on Deepwater Horizon. Opposite Mark Wahlberg, and Peter Berg was directing, and I'm the vice president of BP. And it was like Mark Wahlberg, Kurt Russell, John Malkovich was in there. Gina Rodriguez, who just won the Golden Globe, was in there in the movie.
Yeah.
And I'm the vice president of BP, and I'm working every day. I'm on set. Whenever I'm not on set, he's sending me to drill school where I'm learning because I'm the vice president of BP, I'm doing homework and learning how to be what the oil industry does and how it works. So, every day that I wasn't on set working, I was in drill school, or I was learning how to do the emergency drills.
That's really cool that the research on that. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Peter Berg is legit. Peter Berg is, he's a documentary filmmaker that makes really good movies that are as real as it gets. He's an amazing person, amazing director. Obviously, we've done 3 films together. We have a good rapport. We text each other, happy birthday and Christmas and stuff. And, hopefully we'll get back to set together. It's been a bit. So, I had 12 weeks of work. I've done 12 weeks of work on one film, since, but that gave me my wife and I talked and said, maybe we should see if the kids can deal with the heat in the summer. And so that got here. They got into really good schools. All of a sudden we're like, hey, let's sell the house and let's get out of LA and let's move our lives to New Orleans. And here we are 8 years later. So it was not an easy transition. It was difficult.
Oh, I'm sure any change. Yeah, no.
Yeah. My wife's a partner at a firm. We have a house, it's like, to get rid of all those things. But, looking back on it now, it's one of the best decisions that we all made for everybody. It was just, Los Angeles is a very, very difficult place to live. It's a very difficult place to raise children and a family. It's hard to afford to live there. Even when my kids were in public school, and it was still a challenge. It was a struggle. So, unless you have, lots of money and you built your wealth and you bought some really good property early on. I mean, we looked at houses when we first got there, and if we were laughing at like $250,000 for that house became $550, $750. that, somebody just bought it for $2.5 million. And in 1992, that was worth $250,000. That's worth now almost $3 million, 30 years
wild.
later. So it's kind of, like you kind of go, so, but I feel like our quality of life is very high. Cost of living is lower than New York or LA. So, we found a place where, we're happy, we enjoy our lives.
That's awesome.
There's always a festival going on. The food is amazing, as you can look at me. You can tell I like me some food and a couple drinks here and there. You know what I mean? It's not so bad.
Hell yeah, man. So when you got to LA, what was like for after doing 6 Degrees of Separation, like that tour, what was like did you find an agent right away? Like, what was that whole process when you first
I had an agent. Yeah, I've always this is the agent thing is always it's still I don't have a New Yorker. I have a New York agent, but I have an LA agent right now. It's my manager, but it's like it's just always a challenge. It's hard to find someone. I think the thing that I have that I really appreciate that I have now is I have this manager for 27 years, and he represents me, not just in a business sense, but in a philosophical sense. Hard work, dedication, hustle, dedication to craft, seriousness, and knows how to, just understands the responsibility of being an artist, not just trying to make money. And so, and I have an amazing agent down here in the South who's same thing. She really represents me. She hustles and negotiates my contract for myself and my son, because we're both on the Righteous Gemstones together. And so, that's
amazing.
My son plays Pontius Gemstone, which is Danny McBride's son and John Goodman's grandson.
Oh my God.
So we're both on the same, I got booked first, and then, they auditioned him. And then all of a sudden, we're down in Charleston and meeting Danny, and he's like, oh my God, we got 2 Dumonts, and they say like, you guys are fun. Yeah, that's awesome, dude. We cast you, and like, this is, so I was like, yeah, so we get to have, half the year we spend our time down in Charleston working with them on that show, and finished our 3rd season, and we got picked up for a 4th season. We'll start back up May, June of 2024. So amazing. Kind of moving down here was, it was difficult at first, just transitioning and things for the kids and socializing. But my daughter was starting high school and my son was starting middle school. So these are those kind of times where if you're going to make your moves, socially, this is probably the time to do it.
Yeah.
And
that's like the perfect time. Yeah.
It is kind of the perfect time. And there was just too many things kind of just clicking in place, that job, we had a beautiful house that we rented that was just gorgeous and affordable. And the fact that my daughter and my son got into what, are some of the best schools in New Orleans. And they were like, how the hell did you get your kid? I was like, I don't know. There was a spot open and she auditioned and we got in, and this changed the course of our lives. It was just like, and just like any parent, you're like, I can't not let them go to these schools and have this great experience, where my son was in a classroom of like 32 kids in LA to go to a classroom with 12.
Ridiculous.
With a teacher and an assistant. It's like a 6-to-1 ratio. Are you kidding me? My daughter went to NOCA, which is, they're about to celebrate their 50th year of the school. It's the most creative, more kids go to, to Juilliard than any school in the country, so it's, to be able to kind of, ultimately do what's best for the kids, actually turned out to be the best for us too, and just LA.
What did your daughter get into? Is she into acting, or? She was
an actress. She did the Bonnie and Clyde miniseries opposite Emile Hirsch, which was kind of cool. And then,
that's really cool.
She did some plays here. She did the fun part for me is she did a Tennessee Williams one act called This Property is Condemned. And she did it in the Le Petit Theater, where Tennessee Williams originated the play like 50 years earlier. So she got to work in the theater where it all started. It was just like kind of magical, And then that got her into school at Ithaca College, and then she transferred to Cornell, and she graduated from Cornell, and now works at Dartmouth. Works in the Hood Museum at Dartmouth. So 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 those are. My son, he's kind of a superstar, like he's got some skills, and not just as a parent, it's very nice to have other people go like, oh my God, your kid's like, no, your kid's really, really, really good. And I was like, oh, most parents would say, yes, this is true. But it's nice to be hearing it from other people that are like serious professionals are going, no, your kid's really, really talented and a good kid, you know? So we're, you know, or I should say young man now he's 20. So, you know,
yeah,
they're still my kids, you know, it's just the way it is.
Always. Yeah.
Yeah.
So James, what was the role? Obviously this is something that you were, you know, since you were dancing on that platform or on the Gerber, bottle,
you go from the
what
Gerber
was
bodies.
like the role that you did? What was like the one role or show or, you know, movie you were in that you're like, I can do this as a career? Because obviously, even if you love something so much, there has to be that point that you're like, economically for myself. Was there like a year that you remember that you're like, oh, this was it?
I think there's a lot of those. There's, you know, that people always say some shit like, you know, well, you know, when are you going to get your break? You know, I hope you get your break. And I was like, there's no really breaks. You either keep going or you don't.
Oh, totally.
So it's one of those things where I think, you know, that experience of like the Blues Brothers thing was kind of big to kind of go from being the kid in the back to going right up front. And that was like, see, you can do this. You know what I mean? Like you can do this. And then when I was in high school and I, you know, and I said all the Chicago actors auditioned left and right. And then they're like, we're going to put together like a little group of people that are like the real, you know, that are, you know, they're not in the big part, but we need these buddies around. And once I had that kind of speaking part, you know, in high school, I was like, okay, this is what I want to kind of do. And I think that if I look at 6 Degrees of Separation on Broadway, the fact that I remember writing down and making a determination that I was going to be on Broadway, which seemed like the most craziest thing to write down. I was like, mostly Broadway's musical theater. Like I'm not doing musical theater. Like that's not happening, you know? And I'm like, I'm an off-Broadway guy. I'm like doing this thing and this thing. And then I was like, no, I this is what I want to do. And then there it was. That off-Broadway play, Stockard Channing went away. She came back. They're going to move it up to the new house. It's like, it goes from the new house to the Beaumont Theater. That's a Broadway house. And I'm on Broadway for 2 years and then on the road, you know? And then, so those things. And then I think the other big one was like, the movie Speed. It was like my first big kind of action movie. And I was in the opening scene and I was working opposite Dennis Hopper. It was like this iconic dude that I just admired forever. And when I booked that, I had this opening scene and I get killed in the first, like a screwdriver to head in the first 5 minutes of the movie. I'm dead. I'm done, you know? But for the most, so there's things like that. I think the other big turn was, you know, I'd say Deepwater Horizon was another big kind of turn. And then the real one I think really kind of changed it all for me was Dallas Buyers Club, where I was told by the director that I had beat out some names in New York and some names in LA. And he just was like, you're the guy, you know? And in my callback, It's like, I had one, you know, 2 scenes really, but one big scene. And it was like, he made me do it like 30 times in my callback. You know, this way, slow this down and pause here. Like he you know, is the late, great Jean-Marc Vallée. I mean, he's an amazing director. He was an amazing director and so creative. And I got killer stories about him and on set, but it was like, you know, that movie almost didn't get made. We lost all of our foreign finance within like days of us shooting, you know, and Matthew was severely sick because he lost all this weight and because they were doing all those scenes where he used to have AIDS. And same thing with Jared. Jared was on like some liquid diet for like 2 weeks and they were both very gaunt, very emaciated. You know, Matthew was very close, very sick. And we lost our foreign money. We lost our, you know, and this amazing, you know, Cassian Elway, this great, you know, former agent who became a, you know, producer and is amazing. He called in a 25-year favor to a French guy and said, you're going to distribute this foreign. You're going to put $7 million in a bank. And you're going to do it in the next 48 hours. And he goes, so let me get this straight. You want me to invest $7 million in an AIDS drama with a rock star named Jared Leto and Matthew McConaughey, who's known as a romantic comedy lead. And I'm supposed to sell that foreign. Yeah. that $7 million became like $28 million for him.
Oh man.
And that guy, Voltage, sold recently for something like $1 billion to a Chinese company. So,
oh my God.
But he called in a favor. He got that guy his first job, his first writing job. So he said, I'm calling in a marker, and otherwise that movie wouldn't have got made. I mean, we literally lost all of our funding within days of I was sitting in a hotel. They're going, we lost our funding. Just sit tight. We'll let you know what's going on. And over the weekend, that money was in there. It's like, you'll be on set on Tuesday. We're back in. This is what's going on. I was like, okay, I'm on. I was here for the whole week, just waiting. Work one day, and then it was just like, it was, and then for that movie to walk away that year, Matthew McConaughey and Jared Leto won every award that could possibly exist between actor and supporting actor. It's like they just walked away with it. New York's Critic Society, Golden Globe, Oscar, they just won it all, and it was like, and I got to be in a movie that everybody in the industry had seen. Like there was like everybody had seen.
Yeah.
So unlike Speed, that was a big action thing, or unlike I had other, roles in like SWAT and some other things that I thought were really going to kind of change my career. That movie changed my career, because then all of a sudden I was like, I was not just another character guy in the mix. I was in an Oscar scene that Jared Leto felt was the thing that got him the Oscar. He's like, our scene, father and son together, is like that scene in the mirror.
Yeah.
Everybody really loved. That was great. But our scene was the thing that got me the Oscar. He felt, he's like, hold this. The Golden Globes like, hold this. Half this is yours. So I was like, not half, bro. He goes, just hold it. I wouldn't have got this thing if it wasn't for the work that we did. And that's who that guy is.
Wow.
But once you start to figure out that, you're like, well, wait a minute. I'm working opposite an Oscar winner on Treme, Melissa Leo. I'm working opposite Oscar winner Jared Leto and Dallas Buyers Club. I'm working opposite Oscar nominee Bryan Cranston, Golden Globe Emmy winner.
Nice.
I'm working opposite Emmy Golden Globe winner Ray Romano on television. I'm like, and then you're doing these scenes with these people and they treat you as equals because you are equal. We're all creating this thing together.
Yeah.
They're only treated differently when they say cut. And then you realize, well, wait a minute. I work with Dame Helen Mirren in Trumbo as well. So I'm working opposite what are considered some of the best people in the business. And nobody goes, well, that guy sucks. Like, oh, that scene was great till that guy came in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you kind of go, well, wait a minute. If I'm able to hold my own against the best in the business, or some of these people go from working with me and then they get an Oscar, it's like, that should tell you something. That should, you're not just another guy, or as I like to always, you're that guy. Oh, you're that guy in that thing. Aren't you my kid's soccer coach? I'm like, no. Okay, you were the teacher, like you were at the seminar and I was like, no, I'm an actor. It's like, oh, really? Anything I would have, probably you would see me in a lot of stuff. So there's that. There is that kind of. Yeah, it's like, you're rattling off a whole bunch of credits and, so point is that you start to, it goes a little bit beyond just, I could do this for a living to, what's next? Like, who do I want to collaborate with? Right now I'm in a phase where I'm like, I have a dream list of directors, not as a fan, but as a collaborator. And so I'm thinking about what kind of stories I want to tell while I'm still, standing up, while I'm not feet up yet, So I think that's, so I think these kind of, I guess you could say I made fun of the those breaks, maybe those are breaks, there's like, oh, that's a break, or that led to, and I, I'm very interested to see what's next, and a lot of it has to do, I think, with what kind of stories I want to tell that I have control over, or content that I need to create. Because I think the biggest challenge I've had to face and still face is having to continually prove or audition for, or kind of show people the same role that they know me for. I have to keep interviewing for a job after a while. You know what I mean? Like it gets a little bit tiring to keep having to prove yourself for something you've already done. Like, why do I have to keep proving?
Yeah.
But again, I liken it to an athlete too. It's like, you're only good as the next game, like what you did before, and you got all the rings, it's like, you can, but did you throw a touchdown today? Did you fumble? You know what I mean? It's like, so you look at like the Aaron Rodgers of the world, or you're looking at what's that guy from, he used to be on some team in New England, and he went to Florida. What's that guy's name? Whatever his name is.
That guy the Giants beat twice. That's the guy. I know
that's what I love. It's my favorite thing to always bait the New York sports fans. They go, yeah, when the Giants beat them, like, if you beat them once, it's like, no. But point being is, yeah, you're constantly having to still kind of prove your value and prove your worth. It gets a little tiring after a while, but then there's the other side to it too. It's like, yeah, so I just, like, I did this today. Like, I'm doing a role here that I've done I've done this role already. I've played that role on, on Breakout Kings. I did that already. You know what I mean? But I'm doing it again for the right price and the right circumstance, So there is that, it's an interesting kind of thing to go, I'm just so happy to be able to do it again. It's like not being from the strike, not being able to do it for a good while. So, that's been,
what's wild is it, like, nice obviously you went through that with COVID. Like, you did that in COVID. Yeah. Like, when COVID started, I don't know what the exact time frame was. Obviously, I'm sure COVID was longer, but it's crazy to think that it's like, because it's something that it's in your DNA. Like, that's what you do. You audition.
I'm a storyteller before, and all of a sudden you can't tell that story. It's like, okay, yeah. Yeah, for me, COVID was, man, it's hard to not, I always said that I never want to get to the point where I blame COVID for fucking up a major trajectory in my career. But I must tell you with all honesty, where I was at in March of 2020 was pretty fucking amazing. It was pretty amazing, because after years of flying myself out and driving and childcare and self-tapes, and there was a time where I worked 18 months straight and took 1 week off. And even that 1 week, I was going to do a movie with that same guy for that movie that Eric and I did, but I passed because I was like, my wife was like, look, we haven't seen you in 18 months. Like, we are going on vacation, family. You have to stop. You got to stop. I was like a crackhead about work. And where I was at in March of 2020 was just kind of magical. Like, February, end of February was the premiere of Spencer Confidential. I'm at the Village. I'm on the carpet. I'm like talking to, the number 2 guy at Netflix, Stevens, Scott Stuber and I are like, I'm wearing my red. I'm surrounded by 400 fans. I'm doing selfies like crazy. And I lean over and I see my manager and he's smiling. He's like, lean into it, man. You're a 30-year overnight sensation. You know what I mean? Like, it was just pinnacle. And then from there, I'm flown to Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm going to be in the premiere of The Banker with Sam Jackson. And, Apple's got a car for me. And, instead of me flying myself to the premiere and staying at my sister's couch and, and paying my own way, I'm like, I'm in this premiere in LA, and then I'm going to this premiere in Memphis. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I'm talking to the Apple executives, and they're like, Netflix. And I was like, I'm my agent. I'm in a big, first time I got a bi-coastal agent on both coasts. My son and I are both at this big agency, and I'm just like, I'm on the top of the world. I'm like, and then the fucking Titanic hits, you know what I mean? Like, I'm on the foot of the boat and I'm feeling like I got it all. And then the boat sinks, and then the agency goes away, and and the trajectory goes away. And then I'm like, okay, and then I just immersed myself into teaching, because all of a sudden everybody needed to figure out how to do a self-tape. And I'd been the guy that like booked $1 million worth of work off a self-tape. So I was like, I'm the guy that's got water in the desert. Like, I can show you how to drink all this water all you want, And so, I built my business of like, I have my on-camera workouts now, and I've had, 1,300 people come through my Zoom classes over the last 3 years. Dude. Some of my students have done 500, 800 self-tapes. I've coached at least 5,000 of those in this last, 3 years. So it's kind of, again, I love coaching and teaching, but it's like my passion is obviously being an actor. But the fact that I had this skill that everybody needed at this crucial time, it's just awesome, just awesome.
Yeah,
so I kind of
like
found
a little
a way
silver
to
line.
make it,
Obviously,
yeah.
From
that, I was able to really kind of, create something for myself, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like I'm at the point where, and then, then the strike hits and I did the same thing. I just hunkered down in my business and just took care of actors who were really serious about their craft and share all my experience and show them my self-tape. So they see examples of kind of what I'm talking about, and so it's been, who knows what 2024 it holds, but I can tell you, I know. And again, that whole thing of being on the top of the mountain, it was like, I was invited to Vanity Fair. Like I went to Vanity, I walked in, I was not somebody else's plus one, I walked in and was on the carpet and I'm meeting all these people that I've known. I'm talking to Brad Pitt about, he just got the Oscar, and I'm talking to him about New Orleans, and my friend Laura Dern, she just got the Oscar, and there's Sarah Paulson, and there's like, and I'm just like going through, it was just like a who's who of all these people from being in the Jay Roach is there from Trumbo director. So it's just like, I'm like, holy shit, man, I'm in this thing. You know what I mean? Like I'm in this, I am not on the outside trying to get into this thing. I'm invited to this party. And so it's very seductive. It's very alluring. It makes you, that's the crack mentality of what we do, because it was never about being acknowledged or being famous or making a lot of money, but because I just kept doing the work. And then there I was, like, all of a sudden, all that work, my manager's like, lean into it, man. We've been hustling for 30 fucking years, dude, so enjoy this time, and you realize that it's fleeting, it's temporary, but it's super fucking seductive, because it makes you want to go like, I've seen the mountain. I've been on the mountaintop and I want to go to a bigger mountain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just makes you want to climb. And then you go, well, is that really what it's about? Is it about trying to climb back on that mountain? Or is it about really what you're going to do with the time that you have left while you're here? And this is kind of where I'm at right now. I'm at what I consider probably mid-career,
One thing I had to ask you, because you mentioned the self-tape. Now, is there, like, again, we're not gonna be able to cover the whole process of it. That's why people take your classes over, since COVID, and you've done it for a long time. When you do that, are you, if the role is like a lawyer, are you putting on like a suit for it?
Oh yeah.
Is it?
Oh, absolutely.
You get that?
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was what I have my suit sitting over here. Like I have my whole self-tape.
Oh yeah. Nice.
I got my self-tape setup right behind me. It's like the camera's there, and there's a wall, and I got my suit over there.
Because that's what you do for an audition. So it's the same mindset, right? Of going in an audition in a sense. It's just the only difference is there's nobody.
I'm doing it in the comfort of my own home. I'm not getting in a car. I mean, the self-tape thing it's not going away anytime soon. I can tell you that for sure.
No, yeah.
And that's mostly because
that's not gonna.
Yeah. And that's mostly because the economics of it makes sense. The environmental impact of it makes sense. I remember there was a time where I kept constantly getting called into the CSI's show, but they insisted that you had to be in the producer session at Paramount Studios in Los Angeles in the middle of the day or towards the end of the day. Now, when I lived there, that made sense, but I lived in New Orleans. So I literally was like, get in a plane, fly there, rent a car, check in at my sister's place, work on my material, go drive in, from Santa Monica into Hollywood, right? So I'm getting on a plane, which has fuel, right? I'm polluting the air. I'm getting in a car. I'm renting a car. I'm creating traffic, right? And then I get in a room and there's 20 people in this room. It's all the decision makers. So there's 20 people that got in cars that came there, right? And then there's another 30 actors that come in and audition. There's another 30 cars that are put on the road. Do you see, like, and so, now I can basically, wherever I have internet capacity, I can shoot on my phone. I can, they send me the material, I shoot it, I upload it. I'll be doing that after I'm done here. I'm going to go through all my takes. I'm going to pick the best ones. I'm going to send them 2 takes, and then my work is done. Then if they like it, they're going to move it up they're going to send it to the decision makers. Then they send it up to network, and then I wait for approval. And then all of a sudden, I'm on a plane, so, and this one works a week from today. So it's like, I'll know within a week, what's going on. So, that's the nature of it. I had been doing that for 15 years. So the fact when COVID hit, I just happened to be the guy that really knew what he was doing. And I had a long laundry list of bookings, Jurassic World, even Gemstones was off a self-tape. I mean, I go down the list, cool. Halt, Catch, Fire, recurring roles on stuff that were all self-tape. So, for me, some people were used to going in live, but economically, environmentally, it just doesn't make sense anymore. And the fact that when you do a live audition, there's 8 hours in a day, you could only get maybe 30 people in, or depending on the size of the role, 40 people in a day. Now with the self-tape, you can see 300, 400, 500 people in that same amount of time. So it also gives
the talent pool. The talent pool is deeper. And for you, and for somebody that doesn't want to spend, $1 million on a 2-bedroom, no yard,
Yeah, absolutely. And so I don't think it's going to go away. I think the first thing is looking at people's work. That first read is going to be a self-tape. But oftentimes I'm booked right off the self-tape. I don't do callbacks. There are some situations where they do want you to call back, and now they're doing those on Zoom. And now our new contract has a thing about if there's an option and if they have the economics and time, you'll do a virtual audition. So like you and I are talking, I could basically, you be the director, and I'll do the whole scene as if the two of us are in the same room. And all the decision makers can patch in and have their video off and watch. So there is technology is actually helping a great deal. And we're not throwing a whole bunch of cars on the road. We're not, you know what I mean? We all pay for internet. So it's like, the costs are not the same. It doesn't cost me the same. I'm not renting an office space that I have to, pay for throughout the year for those times that I'm casting. So, COVID was another big thing for a lot of people in our industry, had to make big changes. Agencies, clients were working from, the agents were working from home. Casting directors had offices that they didn't necessarily need. It was like, I could do all this virtual. And so I feel like it's not going to swing totally back to totally live. And I do think one of the things I say to a lot of my students is, the good news is they're seeing more people. It used to be if you were getting a live audition, you had to be at certain agencies or managers. It was almost like a kind of like it's only for certain people were given the little coveted 30 or 40 slots. Mm-hmm. And if you weren't with that agents or managers, you weren't being seen. And so many people, younger people, minorities, that were not being looked at, or even being considered. Now, show me what you're going to do in your self-tape. And so, it really has, I think, leveled the playing field. I know there was an actress who's part of the second, third generation, acting family. And she was bitching about how I'm not getting any work anymore in these self-tapes. And this is, so humiliating. And I don't get to talk to anybody and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're from a third generation acting family. Firstly, you probably have, and I know you have, a very high profile agent. Of course you were given, you're given that entitlement of being, from that family and with this agency, of course. And now you have to audition like everybody else. So now you have to prove it. And that's, so what are we really talking about? And they're like, and I'm losing all these roles to these, people that are not white. Is that what you're saying racism has worked to your advantage. Your white privilege has given you opportunities over other people. And now you don't like it because it's not working in your favor. Yeah. And that's pretty much what you're saying. Like, I'm looking at the article and I was like, I don't want to call you out for being a white entitled person who's been part of an entertainment family for, 30, 40 years. But that's pretty much what's happening right now, and my students are like super like Indian and diverse and like, but the non-binary, and I got trans clients. I mean, like, so, So isn't that the cool thing about our country is that everybody should be able to get a chance? Aren't we all created equal? I know we're not treated equal, but aren't we
that's
all
what the
created
thing
equal?
is that's so funny about
So,
the like parts of this country, or people in this country. It's like they're all for the flag and the nation, which I love the nation and everything. But when they always are like the land of the free and like everybody's created equal, but it's like, oh well, now when it comes to that, like
right.
it's so funny.
Not for me. Like you can't do it. I know. Yeah. I mean, I really think true patriotism and true American democracy is that everybody should get a shot.
Yeah.
They do say, all men and women are created equal. We are created equal, but that's not how we're treated. And I feel like, I think everybody should get a shot. It doesn't matter who you love. It doesn't matter who you pray to. It doesn't matter what your ethnicity is. It doesn't matter what your skin, is it Tyson DeGrassi? Is that it? He was that's the scientist. We all have the same molecule.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. We all have the same molecules. We have the exact same molecules in each of our bodies.
Yeah.
Let's stop talking about how different. I know that's the way in which that people in power want to rule, is to point out how different we are from each other. And what's really sad to me now too is like, even with this whole conflict with with Israel and the Palestinians, it's like, if you look at the Middle East, they have so much they have more in common with each other than any other group of people in the entire Middle East. The way they raised, the religion, the families, the culture, food, music, they have so much in common. But they're part of the way in which is they have to point out how different they are. And the same thing in this country too. I think this whole thing about, every man for himself, that just doesn't work. It's just, I know it's like, well, I got mine. You need to pull yourself up in the bootstraps. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Where did your land come from? What neighborhood do you live in? How did your family get ahead? How do they own a house, but these people don't? Was there a red line in your district? And they're like, so, I don't think everybody was given the same shot, And so I'm still of the philosophy of that, we're all in this together. And the bottom line is the planet's melting. The planet's telling us what's up. You got a young kids. I'm not going to scare you, but
oh, I know.
So we have to okay. So what are we going to do about it? We have to do, because we are all in this together. Just like COVID, you're all in this together. It doesn't matter. Everybody got it at some point. Somebody got something.
Yeah.
And so when we're faced with these things, and I do think this is a beautiful kind of cyclical historical way that we're in right now. Not beautiful, because I do see so much hatred. And again, here we are, another mass shooting. It's like, I did this TV pilot about a guy who's, former military, and he goes into an Indian Sikh, this Sikh. It's like these are some of the most peaceful people in the world. And he just went in there and just slaughtered people and then put his gun to his head. And so he wouldn't have to be held accountable for it. And I keep trying to how is this person indoctrinated? How did this person become this mass murderer? I keep trying to tell that story, but I can't put it up there because every time I turn around, there's a fucking mass murder thing. And I'm trying to say that we can get to the root causes. The reason this pilot exists is to get to the root causes of this. How does one go from being trained and serve our country to walking into a peaceful religious place and just take people's lives for no reason whatsoever? And if we don't start to look at the root causes of that, it's just going to keep happening. And yeah, guns are a part of it, access to certain guns, but mental health, like what's inside people.
Oh yeah.
The gun is the gun, man. But what's inside people, so I feel like we're at it, but like 100 years ago, there was a world war, there was a pandemic, right? There was a depression, but out of that came Einstein. Out of that came Louis Armstrong. Out of that came John Steinbeck. Out of that came some of the most amazing pieces of music, the most amazing the roaring 20s. From all that horrific stuff came incredible art, incredible culture. And I have to, I'm just, eternally optimistic and hopeful that from these things comes from the phoenix, phoenix out of the ashes, from, from poison to medicine, you know what I mean? Like amazing things can come out of this. When you threaten AI, that you're going to use technology to replace human beings. Yeah. Some people are going to have to make a decision. Is that how I want to be entertained? Do I want to be entertained by, something that's non-human, So yeah, it's an interesting time.
No, it is. No, it's a very scary time to be raising young children. Yeah. But I'm of your, I've like blind faith.
You have to.
I think I have to because I've been a Knicks fan my whole life, so I've always had blind faith.
Cubs fan, you telling me?
Well, at least
you're telling a Cubs fan about like 100 years. Yeah, you got to believe.
I know.
You got to believe.
But you saw one. That's all I want. Like my dad was a Jets, Knicks, Yankees. So like his childhood was awesome. Like he was 12, I think, what was he, 14? I don't know, 12. It was like the Jets, the Knicks, and then 2 years later, the Knicks again. And then he saw the Yankees dynasty from 77, 78. And then he gets the 90s. So he had it pretty good. The Jets obviously never won again for him. But no, I just have this, hopefully something's got it. You can only go up from here, I think.
I think so too. Cause I feel like there's cycles. We go through these kind of cycles. Right now I feel we're in a power cycle. We're not in a love cycle anymore. I think we're realizing that power is, I'm starting to see it creatively. I always go like a real mark of the time is what are the kind of stories that are being told during that time or generation. I was born and raised in the love generation. So it's like love was more powerful than hate. Actually, love led to peace. Love, there would be love-ins, there would be like, and they try to influence policy. And there was a sense of like, civil rights, like, so, I feel like we're getting away from the love, the power of love. And we're just getting in the power of power. Like I got money or I got influence or I can buy this or I can lie or I can, I just get a lawyer and, we'll take it out in the courts. I don't need to pay you. Just sue me. You know what I mean? Like I have no sense of right or wrong. It doesn't matter. It's like, prove it, and it's just kind of like, so I feel like I'm interested in us getting back to a sense of commonality and a sense of love, that we are all in this together. And I'm with you too. It's like, I do believe that scientists are going to find ways in which to, and they have. And you also look at COVID, man, if we didn't have COVID, the planet would be far, far worse off than it is right now.
Oh, I know.
And it's not in a great shape. There's like these polar ice caps are moving. Like it's not looking good. But there is a thing.
We were in Iceland for a honeymoon in 2016, and our guide showed us photos from like, they showed us a photo. It was almost like maybe warn these Americans, but he showed us a photo and he's like, "Oh, when do you think this is from?" And we're like, because it looks so much bigger, like what we're hiking up with like the spiked shoes. And I was like, "Oh man, this is probably from like 50 years ago." And the guy's like, "Yeah, this was last year." I'm like, "Oh my God, just so much melted." And it's scary.
Yeah. But I do believe that there are amazing kind of things that are being done where I think we just, we have to take it serious, and just like COVID, everybody's going to be affected by it. So I think we have to start spending more time looking at each other and seeing all the possibility is just as you look at your kids and go, I want you to have a greater life than I have. I want you to be able to go outside and not have to worry about sunblock or not have to wear a sunsuit. I'd like you to go out and just, jump on your bike and be gone all day like I did. I think that's a very difficult thing to let your kids just go out there and just.
I know. No, I can't.
And so I feel like, we're at an interesting time. I'm just, I'm a storyteller. My storytelling, we all stem from people that were grunting and got rocks and drew pictures about the human beings before us.
Yeah.
I'm part of that. And those aren't tech billionaires, and they're not lawyers, and they're not doctors, and they're not politicians. We come from cut from storytellers, human beings that told stories about the human beings that were here before us, and the fires and the floods and the things that were there. That's my gig. So I always feel like, don't ever disrespect me as a storyteller, as an actor, because I go, I don't know. My people were communicating before there was even words. So who the fuck are you? You know what I mean? Yeah, I know, your name's on buildings, and I know that you deliver these packages, and you're creating cars that don't have human beings in them. But I go, so big fucking deal.
Yeah, I know.
My brother's brothers grunted, and he told this story about that there's going to be a flood coming in, and the sun came in. This whole fucking village was out. I'm like, that's where I come from. Where you? Yeah. What's your deal? So I feel like we who cares? That's I don't. I think we learned a lot about that during the strike. As much as they thought they were saving money, and they lost more than they would have given us the first time around anyways. You need us. You need us. COVID hits, what did everybody do? Watch movies, TV shows, listen to music. What solace did everybody need when we're all indoors and we're finally have to look at our kids, and we have to look at, you know what I mean? Sit down to dinner together and really deal with each other. It's like, we all wanted to be entertained, right? We all wanted we were ravenous for content. So you need us. I don't care what you say, you need us, Yeah.
That was such a wild time.
Yeah. It's a wild time, man.
Yeah. Just for content, but no, this has been so much fun. One thing I wanted to ask is, I always like to ask this question, and I'm like, I always try to guess what the person's going to say. But so over the years, are you like a memento guy? Like when you're on sets, do you keep scripts, or do you a prop here and there? Is that something?
Yeah, a little bit. We put together a little time capsule thing for my son for Gemstones. We awesome. Put a little, so yeah, a little bit like that. Not so much of holding on to the scripts. There was a time where I used to like to do that, where I the pilot of something, I get everybody to sign it, and then I go, look,
that's cool.
I'm not holding it for me. I'm going to donate it to a charity, that's going to make some money from it. And I think it'd be kind of cool. So stuff like that I'll do. Yeah, I know it's interesting when you do gigs, there's this every time you finish a job, it's because you don't know when your next job is. That's the cool thing about Gemstones for the first time is I know that show's going to, Danny wants to go 10 years. So I know that show's going to go a bit. But yeah, that last day of shooting is always kind of I don't know, might not get picked up again. We don't know. New owners, new partners, and HBO is now called Max or whatever the fuck that is, and it's just we don't know. And it's we know. It's so there is this thing of I think I don't really hold on to the momentums, but I really kind of there's a piece of my heart every time I do something. And even every time I do a self-tape, I put myself, I always say to my students, I was don't leave yourself out of the self-tape. I mean, I put myself into my work, so it's a little, trademark and a little capsule of what contribution is, what I want to do,
Maybe a lot of things that you'd have. 170 scripts or shirts. I asked
look, I just finished purging. I moved and I was like, geez, man, if I didn't have this basement, man, I'd be in trouble. And then I had a little flood all of a sudden. I was frantically putting things up above while the water's creeping in at 4:00 in the morning. I'm it's flooding. I'm felt like I'm trying to dig out the holes or drains. And I was it was crazy. I felt like I was, I felt like I was on the Titanic, trying to bail out. So yeah, I try not to hold on to a lot of stuff, but I still have these little boxes of things that I still have my Star Wars collection, Star Wars trading cards that are just sitting there, from the 70s and shit.
From the 70s, original?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So there's
you didn't put them in the spokes of your bike or anything?
No. Everybody else did. I was they might be worth something someday. And then my son's got a box of a couple of friends. Someone's father passed away, and like donated all these, baseball cards to my son. He's like, yeah, let's keep them in the box. Just leave them in the box. And that box, I was like, I put that in it's in a big, waterproof thing. I was like, all right, we're good. Leave it right there. Let the water flow. You're good. It's good. It's not going anywhere. Yeah. I don't, for me, it's like, yeah. I mean, I'm hoping Gemstones goes the 10 years Danny wants to go, we're only on season 3 and we'll go to season 4. So
I don't see with a guy like him, man, he's like kind of not an enigma, but he's so good at so much. It's very rare to see somebody that is that good at writing comedy, doing comedy, and then doing action or horror. Like the fact that he wrote, he had his hand in the 2018 Halloween movie is to me like mind blowing.
And the fact that he's got the rights to The Exorcist.
Yeah.
So they're doing that. And he's got the rights. I don't know if you're a 70s kind of Burt Reynolds fan, but they've been trying to do a Smokey and the Bandit movie forever.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, bro.
That'd be nice.
I'm all in on that. I was like,
dude, I would love a Cannonball Run movie. Take like people who are in today. That'd be great, man. Why not?
Dude, I definitely should be doing the Cannonball Run for sure. But I think the Smokey and the Bandit's like the opening precursor to get it going, Because it really is like if like the Fast and the Furious, that's really what Smokey and the Bandit is. It's a modern Fast and the Furious with the car chases and shit. So a little bit of that, and that's like I told Dan I pitched to and it was the stupidest thing to do, and I can't believe I did it, but I was just like I was pitching to David Gordon Green. It's like, I heard you guys are doing like Smokey and the Bandit. He goes, yeah, the script's not there. We're trying to find the money and blah blah blah. I was like, dude. I said, you guys, I think that's a good idea and everything, but the movie you really need to do is you need to do a remake of Deliverance. That's the movie you need to do. And I was like, and I'm just letting you know that I'm available for the Ned Beatty role. And it was like the weirdest thing to pitch David Gordon Green at like 7:00 in the morning over the breakfast buffet at the hotel. But I had my shot. And I think it's totally weirded out our relationship because so Dumont was pitching me Deliverance. And then he said he wants to be the guy that gets ass raped. And we were really just talking about his son and trying to get him into school and a recommendation letter. And he just kind of switched gears on me, and it's just like, so welcome to my world. Welcome to my missteps.
That's amazing.
There's plenty of them.
This has been so much fun. No, I loved obviously like talking about your career and how it all came to be and everything. But you have a really great outlook on life. Like that's
thanks, man.
A very important thing to have.
Yeah, I've been a Buddhist for 35 years, and so
really,
and one of the cool things about it, and we don't have the the patent on this idea, but if you really look at every single person having eternal possibility, then a lot of this shit goes away. If you really respect human life and realize that every person has this potential to change and adapt and to kind of grow, oftentimes you're not going to treat people less than if you realize it's like when you go to other countries, they bow to you because they bow to the possibility, or you can say the God in you, the God-like quality. And so I feel like, I think we've kind of gotten away from, we're so, self-centered and narcissist, and we're in our own little kind of bubbles that we don't recognize that each person has great potential. That people can make mistakes, but they can turn poison into medicine. They have because if you look at every person as a possible godlike or a person of immense eternal possibility, do you know what I mean? That's like a little world peace right there,
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you're indoctrinated or told or conditioned or culturally set up that these people are your enemies, as we're finding right now in these war-torn countries, that's the enemy. They're the enemy. They're the enemy. And even our own country, they're going, they're the enemy. It's these people are the enemy. It's like, no. Every single person has, incredible, immense, eternal possibility. And so when you just take that in, you treat people accordingly. I think, and I think that's an important component. That's of all the things I think we talk about tonight. Like for me, that's the biggest thing. It's just
yeah.
You look at your children with immense eternal possibility, and you should, and that's right, and that's correct. But do you look at everybody like that? You could. I'm not saying you didn't. That's nothing wrong with it. We all have our things, but if you look at everybody as that immense possibility, then you wouldn't take their life. You wouldn't disrespect them. You wouldn't cut them off. You would, like you just, if you just figure. So I feel like for me that kind of helps me to kind of, to deal with the realities of stuff and to step into characters. It's much easier to step into character when you're coming from a place of empathy and compassion, as opposed to, I'm going to judge this character, or this is what they are, whether they're a racist or I play all kinds of characters that are just unlikable pieces of shit. Like I wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's my job. As Shakespeare said, to hold us toward a mirror to nature. Like, look at this. These people exist, and it's my responsibility to, bring them to life, whether I agree or disagree with, where they come from,
Yeah. Because you're like thinking of like, why are they that way? It's not like, this guy.
Right. That's my job is to
hits his
explore
wife.
that
It's
idea.
like, oh, I bet you he could be a piece of shit,
Right.
but also his dad probably did that, or his grandpa did it, or somebody. So there's these things that people are conditioned to that they, in some cases, like not giving people like outs. They're still bad for doing it, but for them, this is like normal.
Yeah. I use because I worked for him and I actually know him pretty well. I worked for Donald Trump.
Really?
And yeah. And I'm going to throw this notion out. What if Donald Trump's father, Fred Trump, just loved him unconditionally? Just loved him for being his son, without having to give him money, without having to live up to the name, without having to prove anything. What if he just loved him unconditionally? Do you think he'd be the same person he is today? Probably. It's an interesting notion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Where'd you work for him? In Florida or?
In New York. I was a DJ on one of his boats, and he bounced his check, by the way, too. He bounced a $1,500 check, but he's building the Trump Tower, It's a little.
That's the Gary Shandling joke. The Gary Shandling joke was I was playing what was the one he owned in Atlantic City that went under?
Yeah, the Taj Mahal.
Oh yeah, Taj Mahal, yeah. And he goes, "How would you like to get paid?" He's like, "Cash." Oh no, who would you want the check to be made out to? He's like, "Cash." Because he got screwed over one time by Trump.
Oh yeah.
So he's like, every time I went there, it was cash only. No, we'll give you Mr. Shanley. We'll give you chips. No, I just want cash.
Cash, exactly, bro. Yeah, no, he bounced 3 checks for me. I'd like 400 a piece, and I'm on the boat with the people that are financing the Trump Tower. I'm just like, he's building like a multi-million-dollar thing, but the fucking guy he's a little cash poor. He's
insane.
So I go, people are what they do. Like, this is who this guy is, But and then the other side, I had a friend of mine, my publicist Charles, who you probably talked to. His father was Fred Trump's publicist, and when his father got sick with cancer, Trump paid for a private room, paid off their mortgage to the house, never asked for a dime. So I have my story. Everybody's got their story, but then on the other side, something he doesn't talk about is that, Charles's father still was, lived for much longer because of Trump paying off the mortgage to their house and giving him a private room at Sloan Kettering, one of the best, cancer hospitals in the East Coast.
That's wild.
That's an interesting story that nobody kind of talks about. So I always kind of go just because you think you know somebody, it's like there's another side to everything, So as much as I blame him for the lives of many people that died, on his watch during COVID, on the other, to save his legacy and, reputation and ego, there's people died. People really died by downplaying it. People really believed. But on the other side of that too is that, here's a little boy that just wasn't loved by his dad without having to prove something. It's like, that's a sad thing,
Yeah.
The kid that doesn't get picked and can't own his own NFL team. So he's going to go, I'm going to go make another one. I'm going to go make my own. So it's kind of sad if you think about it.
The Generals. Oh my God. That whole league was like that. That whole league was about make sure you get to the bank first or your check's not going to cash. What's his name? Talked about that. Rick Neuheisel. He was on the Dallas Desperados, I think. And he said, when they give us our checks, we'd like, it was, he would joke.
We immediately go to the bank. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Because it'll probably be, So point being is, people are what they do, just watch people's actions. Don't worry about their words, watch their actions. It'll tell you everything you need to know, especially for me when I'm approaching characters. That's kind of how I work too.
Yeah.
So we covered a lot of territory,
No, what I like is
instead of plugging stuff, like we can always plug stuff, but I always like talking about.
Yeah, I'll mention people. Like I watch Candy Cane Lane with my kid. Well, my son, he's not really watching. He's running around like breaking stuff. But no,
how old's your daughter?
I loved it. It was really
it's fun.
What was really cool about it when you start to watch it, like there's so many movies, like there's so many. Hollywood's been around. A lot of movies, a lot of shows have been made, and at first, when you're watching the movie, I'm like, you know what? This might be just like that Matthew Broderick, Danny DeVito. And then there was like that wild twist to it. The fact that like Jillian Bell, who I love, just the fact that she was like basically trapping people. It was insane.
No, she's a sex trafficker. That's basically like what she becomes. She becomes a sex trafficker of like, I'm going to, sign right here. Everything's good, Yeah, I mean, there's a great little twists and turns in there. There's also, I don't want to spoil it for everybody. There's the $100,000 payoff is a different $100,000. It's not what you think. So you go through all this shit and good. There's so many things about this movie that I love. Eddie Murphy is just fantastic. Eddie Murphy does Eddie Murphy, and there's scenes in there where he's a good actor, man. I mean, I felt. When he got fired, I was like, wow, dude, like that's right. That Eddie is an actor. And then when Eddie's trying to kick ass, like there's Eddie kicking ass again, making jokes, and then there's that great little relationship that like Tracy and Eddie together. It was a really good pair. Like that, that pairing was a really good pairing. And there was a little bit of, I don't know if you saw there in the end, there's a teaser in there for Candy Cane Lane 2. I make the joke, Candy Cane Lane 2, Electric Boogaloo. The Black Santa story. It's like, I want to see David Allen. I want to know David Allen Greer's story about Santa Claus. Because David Allen Greer's got so much more going on than anything that I can. So I just feel like, I think it's going to be, Eddie Murphy and Santa Claus against some other, and the family's got to do it. I'm like, I'm ready for the next one. Like it's already, and right now we're number one worldwide on Amazon Prime in the entire world. It's number one. And actually, I think it's
you have a big part in that movie. Your part.
Yeah, I got a nice, like the boss role. Awesome. It's like, which here's the thing, Stephen Tobolowsky's in the movie, another friend of mine, Nick Offerman, I know from Chicago. It's like, I just was, it's the second time working with Reggie Hudlin. I did this movie called Safety, which I think, how old's your daughter or son? Your daughter.
He's one.
Who's the younger
daughter's
one?
Going to be 5. Younger, 1.5.
Yeah, a little younger. But later on, when your boy's like in like sports age, like this movie Safety for Disney Plus was like super great family movie. And Reggie directed that. I did that with him. And we just built a nice rapport. He and I, get along really well. And it's super great. So, and I got a nice fun little, I get to work off with Tracy Ellis Ross, and she's just super sharp and funny. And, coming off of Gemstones is like, I'm ready to do anything, so, the two of us,
before we started talking,
really click. Yeah.
Before I started recording, you were mentioning that you were there for like the last 2 days.
Yeah, so, like, that was my last 2 days of shooting.
So your scenes were all shot just the last 2 days? Like everything was pretty much done?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Like my first day, I think, was Eddie's rap day. Like he rapped, and then like, okay, Eddie's gone. And now we're not done. We got to finish this movie, and I'm like, I just got here. Everybody's like tired and long days and trying to, it's like took them 3 hours to set up all the shots with the conveyor belts. And there's like, we're in the really Budweiser, bottling plant, and it's still working. They're still like doing beer over here. We're trying to make a movie over here. So it's, let me just 1 second. Yes.
Oh, you're good, man.
yeah, it's just one of those things where, yeah, it's one of a kind of a crazy little notion in there. So yeah, everybody was kind of tired and ready to kind of go. Everybody's tired and ready to go home, but I'm like, I just got here and the movie's not over yet. So like that kind of thing. So
that's why movies are magic, man. Like the fact that he wasn't even there, but he's in that your scene, that's pretty wild.
Yeah. It's pretty fun. And Tracy didn't kind of know who I was. I knew who she was through Blackish, and she was fantastic. I've always wanted to work with Eddie. I only had brief conversations with Eddie because I knew his brother Charlie when I was DJing in New York. And so we had a nice quick little moment. He's like, wow, man, Limelight. Holy moly, dude. That brings me back. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So yeah, it was one of those things where we had a great time. And Reggie Hudlin had directed The Great White Hype, which is with Peter Berg and Mark Wahlberg, Peter Berg and Samuel L. Jackson. And so every time that Reggie and I are together, I take a quick little picture and I text it to Pete and I was like, hey man, Reggie and I. He's like, oh, say hi to Reggie for me. So there is this kind of interesting kinship, but I've had this, great opportunity where I've done 3 movies with Mark Wahlberg and Peter Berg. I did Deepwater Horizon. I did Patriots Day. I did Spencer Confidential, which, the other thing with COVID is Spencer Confidential drops the week before the entire planet goes indoors. It was the best thing ever for me.
Yeah.
Because that movie's 2 hours long or 90 minutes or something. Most households were watching 200 hours of that fucking movie. It was crazy, bro. Everybody was watching that thing. They watched it 2-3 times. So it was so you just happened to be that movie at that time. Same thing with The Banker. It was we went indoors and The Banker kind of dropped, right after COVID. So it was just one of those things where, you just happen to be that movie at that time. And I do feel the same thing with Amazon Prime. I feel with Candy Cane Lane, we really need a comedy Christmas family movie right now.
Oh,
we just do, it's funny enough that the little kids got something. There's jokes for the little kids. There's jokes for the teens. There's some good adult jokes. Mm-hmm. There's just something for everybody. And it's ass is the biggest swear word in the movie,
Yeah.
And you got Christmas and you got some magic, and it's right now we kind of need this kind of movie, where we just feel good about our family and we're appreciative and we got through a COVID and now we're, I got through a strike and, it's just an interesting kind of time. So I'm just proud to be in it. I get to work with Reggie again. And, my scenes, we got conveyor belts and we're dealing with all the animatronics of the animals and shit and the CGI. And it's took them 3 hours to set it up, but I knocked out all my work in 20 minutes. It was just fantastic. So there's that. And then, we're going to do
James.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gemstones got picked up for season 4. We'll start that in May or June of 2024. It's going to be another 9 episodes. My son's on there as well. So, we usually average between, 4 and 6 episodes a season. So at least half a season we're in there. And they kept saying that my son had a really good arc this season. If you watched, he had a really great arc. And they're like, oh man, we got so much stuff. They got a whole plan for him. It's kind of crazy. And they keep talking about, they're going to put he and I in the same scene together for the first time. So we've been in scenes together, but never in the scene. So they're talking about trying to have the two of us kind of square off or do something like that kind of thing.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's
it's a family affair for the Dumonts.
It's exactly that. It's it was one of the greatest compliments is Danny McBride. We were sitting in the trailer and things like that, and he's I'm Danny's in the middle and Kelton's getting his hair kind of bleached thing, and I'm getting my makeup on, and he looks in there and goes, man, I got 2 Dumonts in my show. He goes, that's cool. That's cool. And I'm like, it's no work. This is beyond cool. Are you fucking kidding me? You're Danny. I fucking love you, dude. And the fact that you feel honored that we're both in your show, I'm like, you're amazing. But I'm like, this, you're right. Yeah. This is just, we spend Father's Day on set. It's just it's been a joy, so, and I hope it just goes forever. It just runs and runs and runs. So that's what's up. Yeah, man.
It's been awesome, James. Thanks so much for taking the time. Blues Brothers. Could you imagine your first credit being Blues Brothers? That's so cool. What a cool story. Just how he got on that. And just think about how many credits we covered that he was in. I thought it was really neat, his story about Deepwater Horizon, how since he was working in oil, his character that they said, hey, let's go, have you really check it out. I think it's really cool when films do that because it really puts you into the role. And yeah, he's a Louisiana guy now. It's cool that he gets to act with this kid. I'm really excited for the next season of Righteous Gemstones, and it's really cool that his story. Man, I got 2 Dumonts on my show. When Danny McBride says it, and he's like, "Dude, you're Danny McBride. This is really cool." Oh man, great stuff. So your homework, Jurassic World. I haven't looked it up. I'll do it right now while I'm talking. Where you can watch it. I'm sure it's got to be on some streaming service with it being such a big movie. Oh yeah, you can watch it. It's on HBO Max. So if you have HBO Max, you're good. If not, it's like $4. I'm sure you've seen it before. Me and Jamie will make sure we lay down. If you haven't seen it in a while, we'll take care of it. We'll let you know. We'll help visualize it while we describe Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard talking to dinosaurs. Yeah, Chris Pratt communicates with dinosaurs in this one. Lots of fun. So don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And don't forget to check out our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, guys.